Welcome back, everyone, to the International Cannabis Business Conference here in sunny San Francisco, California. And joining me here at the desk, we have Rick Steves. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Russ. Good to be with you.
It's so great having you here every time we get to talk to you. And it's gotten to the point, I followed you around Oregon. I've seen you at the Hemp Fest. I think I can deliver the high as a place speech at this point. But the people seem to really, really enjoy it. And tell us a little bit about your thoughts on California. I mean, you're 2-0. You've legalized every state that's legal on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon. What do you think about California 2016?
Well, I don't want to bet on any losers. Because I'm going to throw my all into Washington in 2012, into Oregon in 2014, and I completely hope to be able to come down to California and do whatever I can to help California legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana. It'll be a good year because it's a presidential year. That'll bring out more young and progressive voters and so on. And as I mentioned in my talk here, I just think it's really, really important for California to realize that pot smokers are not the voters you need to get. You got to get the vast majority of our population that just thinks it's scary and we don't need another vice. And it's very easy to frame the whole legalized marijuana issue in a way that frightened people and conservative people can embrace. And that's what I want to do when I come down here. I'm hoping to contribute some money, and I'd love to spend 10 or 12 days talking in 15 or 20 cities around the state, sharing my take on the wisdom of stopping the prohibition against marijuana. But I'm really going to advocate here in California as much as I can for California to go like Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, the states that have one, and that means have a public safety law, a law that is not pro-pot but pro-civil liberties and smart law, a law that recognizes the legitimate concerns of people who are inclined to vote no on it, and to tackle those concerns and have them vote yes. And it's incremental, you know. I mean, we know that people are more frightened of marijuana than they need to be, but we have to respect their fears, and we have to deal with the concerns about children getting their hands on pot, about safety on the roads, on employers being able to defend the standards of their workplace that they want, and so on. And I really think that the major accomplishment for us, Russ, is to get beyond the fear and for people to realize, hey, this guy's not going to fall. We're not locking up people anymore for smoking pot, and we're not stoking a very important black market industry that enriches and empowers gangs and organized crime, but we're turning that huge black market, which must be one of the biggest cash crops in California, if not the biggest, into regulated and taxed legitimate industry that's going to generate a lot of good tax revenue to do important things that wouldn't be able to get done otherwise, and to take the all that money away from organized crime in the black market. I just think it's common sense. There's so many ways we can frame this, and I'm pretty confident that assuming California has a smart law, a public safety law, a law that law enforcement and that gang may not endorse, but they won't come out against. I think that we can build on the momentum we've had from Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, and Alaska, and find that California legalizes in 2016, and when that happens, it's going to be a snowball right across the whole United States of America.
You know, I'm glad you bring up the point of people's perceptions and the audience of voters that have very little knowledge or information about marijuana and the people that use it. And I would compare it to previous cultural shifts, you know, integration in the 40s and 50s. You know, the laws changed, but people didn't really understand that black folks were just fine, normal people like everyone else, until they were exposed to more black folks. Same thing with the LGBT movement. You get more exposed to people out of the closet. Do you feel that now, with legalization happening in now 4 states, that as we move forward in the next few states, it may not have to be as conservative an issue, conservative a ballot measure? I know Washington, starting off being the first one, you had to put a whole bunch of conservative things in there.
Yeah, we had to have no home grow. And very strict DUI. And, you know, you can Monday morning quarterback all these things, but I think it's very important to compare not the ideal law, but the status quo compared to what you can certainly pass. And then remember, once you pass it, even if it doesn't reach as far as you wanted it to reach, people will get comfortable with it, and then it will evolve further. Legislators can tweak it, you know.
And we're seeing that in Washington with the city attorney, Pete Holmes, is calling for vapor lounges, a kind of a coffee shop-ish sort of situation where
Right.
people have a public use venue. And I believe one of the bills, I think Senator Ann Rivers' bill just got adopted by the Senate, and I think that one allows for some level of home grow. Maybe that was Colwell's bill, but it does seem to be evolving.
The point is, it's just 2 years later,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden people, because I live in Washington State, and it's no different. We're just not locking up 5 people or arresting 5,000 people a year that we used to arrest. The state is saving all sorts of money that way. We're generating tens of millions of dollars of tax revenue, and most importantly, there's no indication that more young people are getting the pot, or there's more DUIs on the road, or you've got these fear factors that we have to overcome. Once you overcome those fear factors, then I think people are going to be more comfortable with home grow and lightening up on other dimensions of the discussion that we can talk about. But there's legitimate concerns about there. There's this whole thing about edibles that would be attractive to kids, or people that can overdose on edibles and stuff. And if I was not a pot smoker, and if I didn't know this whole industry, I'd be like, whoa, slow down. And I think it's impressive to me how we have 2 countries, really. We have a part of our country that realizes you can legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana, and then it's suddenly not that big a deal anymore, and we can deal with it smartly. And there's other people that are very fearful of it because they just can't picture it in their community. You take the average American and you walk them through HempFest, and they're going to just be emotionally exhausted. They're going to be so stressed out, and they just think these are a bunch of freaks. Well, they're not a bunch of freaks. They're a bunch of citizens.
Yeah.
And they're there whether you like it or not. It is a culture within our beautiful, multifaceted United States of America, and it's just very, very important to recognize people's civil liberties. And getting back to your basic question, do future states, can they be more aggressive with their bills? Different states can try, but I would not want to lose this opportunity in California.
Right.
Because you got to make it happen on a presidential election year, because you need more young voters and more voters out. You gain, I don't know, I'm not a political wonk, but you probably gain 5 or 6 points in the election by going in a presidential year instead of an off year. So California has to do it in 2016 because we want to keep the momentum going. I was just talking from people from the Midwest, and they've got initiatives brewing, and if California fumbles, it sets us way back. And I don't want to wait another 10 years for this.
Absolutely.
So I want a law that is going to, frankly, that's going to upset a lot of cannabis activists in California, and I want to win it. And then we'll deal with their concerns after marijuana is legal, regulated, and taxed in this great state.
I agree. I think it's a lot easier to fight to expand your rights as a citizen than to get all your rights as a criminal, right? Starting
point.
as a
That's
criminal,
a very good point.
You're arguing, you just got to argue for the acceptance.
It's a whole different environment now in Washington. I host political events. I just had Senator Patty Murray in my living room, and I got my bong right there behind her on the shelf. It's legal. There's no question about it. It's a civil liberty. And she's right there talking to her people, hosted by a guy who's got a bong on the shelf.
That's wonderful.
She's not necessarily in favor of it or against it. She just likes the fact that grassroots democracy is playing out here. We're doing it smart. We're doing it respecting people's legitimate concerns, and we're doing it celebrating civil liberties. That's what America's all about, and you can spin that in the most conservative of crowds. You saw us in Medford in Oregon. That's a famously conservative place.
Oh, yes.
We got to give our little presentation there, and the Medford newspaper endorsed us. That's amazing that Medford would endorse us, and all of a sudden all these hardcore reactionary types are giving it a different look. That's a huge accomplishment. To get endorsed by the Bellingham Western Washington student newspaper, you don't need that.
No.
But to get endorsed by the Medford city newspaper editorial board, that's very exciting. We're going to do the same thing in the more conservative parts of California, and I can hardly wait.
You brought up the cultural aspect. Walking an average American through HempFest, they'd see a bunch of freaks. But then again, lots of cultures have lots of freaky things. I look at people that run away from bulls and throw tomatoes at each other in Spain, and I think that's a little freaky.
That's pretty freaky, you're right.
So one interesting thing that you bring to this, of course, the audience that you generate at these events is skewed much more toward the non-pot smoker crowd. Somebody your mom or grandma is going to want to watch and enjoy. And as you brought this message to them, originally it was the European perspective and how forward-thinking they were moving forward on drugs, and America was prohibitionist and behind the times. Is there an aspect now where the tables tables have turned a bit, and maybe some parts of Europe need to learn a lesson from America?
Well, that is interesting, because Europe is flying the dream team we had in Washington State to win I-502 and legalize marijuana in Washington State a few years ago. European cities are flying our people over there to help them and talk with them and go to their conventions. Pete Holmes goes over there, Alison Holcomb's going all over the world. Europe is more progressive on marijuana up until now, but they never had the patience or determination or whatever to deal with what they call the gray area.
The market.
The whole behind the scenes, the wholesaling, the distribution, the production. That was just all, don't tell me about it, and we'll just regulate and tax the retail to the consumer end of it. And now it's very easy to regulate that bit. But to deal with the whole backside of it, as the Netherlands never has, and that's what Washington and Colorado and Oregon are doing, that's complicated. And there's a lot of people that are frustrated in these first leadership states because we don't get the gray area exactly right. Nobody's done it yet, and this is quite an impressive undertaking, and cut us a little slack. It's just 2 years into it, and we're doing something that no other political entity has ever done, is stand up against our government's insistence on criminalizing marijuana, and we're making it a legitimate, regulated, and taxed industry that's going to employ a lot of people and free up a lot of law enforcement to deal with more serious problems. So we'll get the gray area figured out, and I don't mind us being the ones that fall in the barbed wire so everybody can walk over us.
I remember you mentioning even the gray area in the Netherlands, where the Dutch coffee shops are only allowed to have half a kilo.
That's right, yeah, 500 grams is maximum inventory, yeah.
And then the mayor wanted to raise that because of the traffic.
Because, yeah, you can sell a ton of marijuana, but you just can only have 1 pound at a time in your shop. So they're having all sorts of deliveries every day. And the mayor was recognizing just the traffic congestion that was causing. So the mayor, believe it or not, in Amsterdam was advocating to double the allowable inventory to 1 kilo, 2.2 pounds.
Wow, that's fantastic. And then final thing, just north of Washington State in Canada, Mark Emery's returned back home. Jody Emery made a run at a Liberal seat that got turned down by the federal Liberals, but Canada seems to have been in their George W. Bush years lately, kind of a political retrograde situation on marijuana.
I remember when I was just starting to get ramped up to this in Washington State, our bar association was having a convention, which was the hypothetical, once we legalize, what are we going to do as a society? I mean, this was 10 years ago. And at that time, senators from Canada were coming down and way ahead of us, very comfortable with this. And then they had this rollback, and I think a lot of it was extortion from the United States government. It's hard for a smaller economy to stand up on an ideal when the consequence for standing up for the truth of the ideal is a trade war with the United States. It's pretty tough to sell to your people, so they don't want to risk that, and they rolled back marijuana. That's my understanding of it. And they've got a pretty vigorous cannabis community up there that wants to stand up for their civil liberties, and right now they're looking at us and being emboldened by what we're doing just south of the border.
It's amazing. Folks, he's Rick Steves, at Rick Steves on Twitter, ricksteves.com on the internet, Rick Steves Europe on television, Europe Through the Back Door in the books. Anything else that I forgot to mention?
Facebook. Oh, no, what people can do is they can go on YouTube and find my talk. I had a lot of fun giving this talk here in San Francisco, and basically if you just Google Rick Steves and marijuana, you can find my different talks that I give, and maybe you can enjoy some of these ideas that way.
It's great stuff. Tell your grandma to watch this stuff. She'll love it.
That's my specialty.
Thanks so much, Rick. Appreciate you coming by.
Okay, happy travels.